Hi there, it's Kevin with RogueDeckBuilder.com here with a top 10 list of cards that I want to brew around from Shadows over Innistrad. Now let me tell you, a lot of times it's hard to fill this top 10 list with, especially current sets like Khans of Tarkir and Dragons of Tarkir were just kind of like no-brainer sets where it had a specific cards being on a level of their own when you compared them on power level with other cards. But this set just seems to be full of amazing synergistic and cards you kind of have to work around. They just can't be shoved into decks. And I really, really like Shadows over Innistrad, and I could easily make like a top 25, top 30 list of cards that I'm excited to brew around. But for the sake of time and for the sake of narrowing it down to 10, I have chosen actually 10 in an honorable mention. The first one is Prodder, is my honorable mention. This is what people are calling Dark Confidant's Big Brother. Prodder is a 3-2 with Menace for 3 mana. At the beginning of your upkeep, reveal the top card of your library. Any opponent may have, you put that card in your graveyard. If the player does, Prodder deals damage to that player equal to that card's converted mana cost. Otherwise, put that card in your hand. So this has some advantages. It's in red. I think red, I don't know if Burn quite wants it in Modern, but it's going to be a very, very interesting card, at least in Standard, and especially if you have a high converted mana cost deck. But where this card kind of is the opposite of Dark Confidant is you want to see like lands off Dark Confidant or low converted mana costs off Dark Confidant. This guy wants to see the opposite. You do not want to see lands, otherwise your opponent's going to pay 0 life for you to put that into the graveyard. Fortunately though, it will get a land off the top basically for free, and then if it's even a 1 mana spell or a 2 mana spell, your opponent is going to have to pay some life, prevent you from drawing that card. The next card I want to talk about, my number 10, is going to be Pick the Brain. Pick the Brain, I love these type of cards. These give me some way to combat those kind of what I like to call glass cannon or one-trick pony decks. I'm looking at you ad nauseum. Pick the Brain, I think you'd have to find a specific card in their hand, but a lot of times, like, you want to be at 3 mana, not 4. A lot of the combo decks, especially in Modern, can go off by turn number 4. We're talking about Scape Shift. We're talking about ad nauseum. And I think Pick the Brain is perfect. We got to see how powerful Infinite Obliteration is. And then now Pick the Brain says target opponent reveals his or her hand. You choose a non-land card from it and exile that card. So that's 3 mana. But if you have Delirium, if there are 4 more card types among card types in your graveyard, search that player's graveyard, hand, and library for any number of cards with the same name as the exiled card. Exile those cards, and then that player shuffles his or her library. So I don't know how hard Delirium's going to be to get off in Modern. I guess you could put this with like a first turn. You want at least like an instant or a creature. Something needs to go to the graveyard for Pick the Brain. Land is very easy, so you have a land in the graveyard. But I'm not quite sure if we can actually, by turn 3, get all the Delirium cards in the graveyard for this to work. But it's just an interesting little design. Whenever Wizards prints a card like this, I'm very happy because it gives us a way to combat those type of glass cannon, one-trick pony type decks. So going to be very, very excited to brew around this in Standard if there is one of those type of decks, and we can just break it up just with one card. Absolutely love it. Going on to the number 9, which is Rattlechains. This card I've been pretty excited to brew around because we're just missing one card for the archetype to work. We actually have the 2/1 flashing dimensional something out of the Eldrazi. There's also a Bounding Krasis out of Origins. So at least, I mean, just out of blue though, I think we have enough flash cards now. And this is the perfect mana cost. You want a 2 mana or a 3 mana flash spell because that's the same turn you're going to be keeping up mana for like removal or counter spells. So I'm a big fan of the blue flash archetype. Blue flash archetype is where every card in your deck is going to, it's a tempo based strategy. You're just going to be trying to cast creatures that have flash that actually can put pressure on your opponent. So 2/1 flying is exactly what you want to see. And this one can also give a spirit hexproof, so you can actually save another spirit if it is going to be a spirit type deck. And then you may cast other spirit spells as though they had flash. Not quite sure I care about that. What's kind of cool about this is it gives changeling spells flash. So just keep that in mind for like Modern. And there might be a spirit tribal, and I think this is a perfect spell or a perfect creature in a spirit tribal deck. Going on to number 8, this is Duskwatch Recruiter. Duskwatch Recruiter is a 2 mana for a 2/2, which it transforms into a 3/3 which says creatures you control cost 1 less to cast. But we're not worried too much about that. That's a kind of cool ability. It's, again, a 2-drop that turns into a 3/3 if they cast no spells. 2 mana, and then 3, look at the top 3 cards of your library. You may reveal a creature card from among them, put in your hand. I think this is modern playable. I actually think that a human tribal deck will want this. I'm very excited to build around a human tribal because it gives you kind of that staying power, I guess is what you call, or that just it's just value. After a while, if they don't remove this card, you're going to be able to, it's basically just 3 mana draw a card, anticipate for creatures, which is extremely powerful, and that's exactly what a green deck wants. Turning into the 3/3 and making creatures cost 1 less is also kind of nice. This is absolutely going to go in my Animarsal of Elements commander deck, because this is almost the entire deck is going to be creatures, and one of the problems with Animar is you start to run out of creatures, and basically all the creatures that you cast are going to cost absolutely nothing. I don't want this guy to transform because I want to be able to just dump 3 mana and begin to fill back up my hand with creatures. Another card this card goes greatly with is Training Grounds in Commander. It'll just be 1 mana, so look at the top 3 cards of your library. I don't know if Training Grounds is quite powerful enough for Modern, but any card that actually makes Training Grounds better is definitely an interesting card for me, because I've been wanting to have a Training Grounds deck in Modern for quite some time. Number 7 is Harness the Storm. I think this card is extremely broken. Harness the Storm is a 3 mana. Whenever you cast an instant or sorcery spell from your hand, you may cast target card with the same name as the spell from your graveyard. This doesn't exile that card, so Harness for a Storm can really get broken with cards like Gitaxian Probe and Serum Visions and whatnot, and especially the rituals. You'll be able basically to duplicate all of your rituals, and it doesn't even exile them. And as soon as you have, I mean, basically every card says you may pay double its cost for double the card, and if it's in your graveyard. But that's not that hard with cards like Faithless Looting, cards like Thought Scour. In this type of deck, or this type of standard, there's going to be plenty of cards in your graveyard. You got to think of like Jace and just the Tormenting Voice, just the plethora of cards that are just going to self-mill or discard cards from hands. Work perfectly with Madness type strategy. Huge fan of this card. I think it's going to be very, very fun to brew around. Going on to number 6, Asylum Visitor. Asylum Visitor is a 2 mana, another kind of Dark Confidant-like card. Is a 2 mana for a 3/1. That's cool. Madness 2, that's even better because you can cheat it into play without costing you any cards. Plus, Madness goes perfectly in a self-discard deck. Think Burning Inquiry or Goblin Lore or Dark Deal. All of those cards are usually card disadvantage, and you want some way to Madness them in. At the beginning of each player's upkeep, if that player has no cards in hand, you draw a card and you lose a life. I think this goes perfectly in an 8-rack type strategy or the Waste Not type strategy, because you're going to be getting rid of everyone's hand, and then this will allow you to draw cards. Plus, it's a 3/1 beater. That's not something that you should be underestimated, because that's a much higher clock than a 2. I mean, this would be very, very good at even a 2/1, but a 3/1 I think is what really puts it over the top. On to number 5. Number 5 is the Silverfur Partisan. Silverfur Partisan is a 3 mana for a 2/2 trample wolf warrior. Which is kind of cool because I want to build a warrior tribal for quite some time as well. Wolf is actually getting very, very interesting. There's a lot of like ways to put wolf tokens into play, and this is going to be one of them that is going to put a ton of wolf tokens in play. So you got to think of any sort of like thing that pumps up wolves, or wolf tribal might actually be a Collected Company. Collected Company with this card is great. Whenever a wolf or werewolf you control becomes a target of an instant or sorcery spell, put a 2/2 green wolf creature token on the battlefield. Now, what I like Silverfur Partisan is this gives us another option for my Akron Crusader / Young Pyromancer deck in Modern that is kind of like a heroic type card. You got to think of this as it basically has heroic except not enchantments. So you're going to use cards like, there's a Convoke +2/+2, I think it's called Gather Courage, that you can cast for free on this card, and it will put a 2/2 into play. And basically you just try to storm off, and if you can have any way to give your creatures haste, there's a plenty of amount of red, then you can attack in for lethal. You got to think about cards that also draw cards in response. So there's plenty of them throughout the Modern format. I can't remember what the green one does, but the Crimson Wisps is haste and turns it red until end of turn, and so it's just a free spell to get a 2/2. So now we have Monastery Mentor that we can use. We actually have 4 really premier cards. We have the Monastery Mentor, we have the Young Pyromancer, the Acronym Crusader, and now the Silverfur Partisan that really work in that type of archetype. We're going to be targeting your own creatures and getting value out of that. So I'm going to definitely brew around like a Naya tokens build that tries to cast a bunch of spells in one turn and then swing in for lethal by giving them all haste. On to number 4 is Essence Flux. Essence Flux says exile target creature control, then return that card to the battlefield under its owner's control. If it's a spirit, put a +1/+1 counter on it. This is just another flicker card. I think that now we have the Manifest deck. We have enough of them in Modern where you manifest the top card of your library, then flicker it if it's an Emrakul. That's what I've been trying to build for quite some time. And the whole goal of the game, again, is just to flicker or to manifest a huge creature and then exile it, and then it returns. So if it has any enter the battlefield effect, of course, Emrakul doesn't quite have it, so you can actually break it with other cards that do have enter the battlefield effects because you're exiling it, then returning it. And how it works with Manifest is you always, like, it's its manifested side, but if you exile it and return it, it's going to be its unmanifested side. And so, for example, if you have Emrakul manifested, use Essence Flux, it exiles it, returns it back, and you'll have the huge flying spaghetti monster ready to attack next turn. You can actually do this instant speed, which is really cool because then they won't be able to respond to it in a turn. You'll be attacking in for a 15/15 Annihilator 6. This card is extremely powerful, and looking forward to breaking it in the Modern format, but I think it's actually quite powerful in the Standard format as well. On to number 3 is Diagraph Colossus. Diagraph Colossus is a zombie tribal card. Any sort of zombie tribal card I'm going to be very excited about. It's a 2/2 for 3. When it enters the battlefield, it gets +1/+1 counter on it for each zombie card in your graveyard. So the cool thing about this is most of the cards that existed before this are those kind of like XX or star ones. And if you don't have any cards in your graveyard, it's hard to cast it. But this card is just 3 mana for 2/2, so at least it's going to protect, or it's going to come out into play without having to have anything in your graveyard. And whenever you cast a zombie spell, you put a 2/2 black zombie creature token onto the battlefield tapped. That is huge. Every one of your little tiny zombies. So think about this with the the Gravecrawler. Gravecrawler is casting. There's a few other you cast from your graveyard. Oh man, this is definitely gonna go in my zombie tribal commander deck. Be looking forward to that. I'm gonna try to pump that out before Saturday. We have a zombie. If you haven't watched my Battle for the Defiled deck, go ahead and watch that commander deck where it's kind of these more higher production videos. And I'm gonna be doing one which is a Grixis zombie tribal deck. I'm not gonna spoil the commander quite yet, but this is gonna go perfectly into that deck, because one of the things you want to do is recast Gravecrawler over and over and over, and then you can sacrifice it with the Phyrexian Altar. And Diagraph Colossus plus Phyrexian Altar plus the Gravecrawler is going to be infinite 2/2 zombie creature tokens. Yes, they will come into battlefield tapped, but actually it's going to be infinite mana because then you can sacrifice those zombies. So this card is insanely good in that deck. I think it's going to be very powerful in Standard, and who knows, maybe we can break this type of card in Modern. On to number 2. Number 2 is Thalia's Lieutenant. This is the card that finally makes the human tribal amazing in Modern. Yes, let me say that again. Humans are going to be a thing. Just go and check out Naya Allies for a reference. Now we have humans that works very similar to Naya Allies because we have the Champion of the Parish and now the Thalia's Lieutenant and the Mayor of Averbrook. And all those together with Collective Company is going to be a very hyper-aggressive deck. The Mayor of Averbrook is going to give them all +1/+1. The Thalia's Lieutenant, when it enters the battlefield, is going to give them all +1/+1. If you have anything that actually works off of +1/+1 counters, I'm thinking about throwing this in my Shaman deck because most of those cards are going to be humans. Well, actually, I think a bunch of them aren't humans. But if you have anything that works off +1/+1 counters that gets any added benefit, this is going to be a sweet card as well. Got to think of Hardened Scales in this type of deck. Thalia's Lieutenant is going to have so many synergies, so many combinations. It's actually a Soldier too, which is nice, and a Soldier tribal. But basically this is whenever it enters the battlefield, +1/+1 count on each other human creature you control. And whenever another human enters the battlefield under your control, put a +1/+1 counter on Thalia's Lieutenant. Huge value. This is something that you can even flicker too, and you can continue to get more value out of the card. Really looking forward to a Collected Company human deck. In Collected Company is still legal in Standard, but you don't have the amazing cards as far as the Champion of the Parish and the Mayor of Averbrook. This is something too that I really want to... I talked about in another video talking about a plane format, And I think some people misunderstood me. I don't think that we should kind of pit the planes against each other, even though I think that would make for an interesting format, other than there would have to be a ton of bans from the Mirrodin and the Zendikar blocks, because those blocks are extremely powerful with the broken artifact lands as well as the Eldrazi lands. So, but I think that a plane format, whenever we go back to a new plane, they should try to do... I'd be so interested to have like even a pro tour around this type of format, because Extended kind of fell on... Extended and Block weren't that popular because they were too limited, I think. Well, Extended wasn't very limited, but it basically... what happened with Extended is there would be a particular archetype, and it'd be powerful for too long, and there wasn't a lot of cards from new sets that really added towards it. But Block, you were just limited. A lot of the Block formats fell on kind of flat creativity and synergies, just because, again, there was just not enough cards to work around. But I think if you add, like, if we would right now have a format that would now let Avacyn Restored, Innistrad, and Dark Ascension legal, and possibly if they were somehow to look over like the Origins or like the M sets and say, hey, these cards are from this plane, so they're legal as well, then I think that'd make a very interesting format. And it'd be cards like Thalia's Lieutenant that would be very, very interesting with... This card wants to be synergized with Champion of the Parish and Mayor of Averbrook. So I'm hoping that we can get enough... I'll try to play it on Magic the Gathering. Maybe we can get enough interest that we're going to do a planar format. And whenever a new plane comes out, the old plane that it corresponds with is legal. So for this case, Innistrad will be legal, and I think they'll make some very interesting decks. And let me think what you think about that in the comment section below. I'd love to see a pro tour like that. All right, so on to my number one, drum roll please, which is Alms of the Vein. Okay, if there's one card that is going to get me into Pauper, it's going to be Alms of the Vein. Now I have 2 3-damage spells with Madness 1. We have Fiery Temper and the Alms of the Vein. I am building black, red, Madness in Pauper. This card is insane. It is target opponent loses 3 life and you gain 3 life, Madness for just a black. I want this card so badly already. This, even if you have to spend it for 3 mana, that is not bad. There's a ton of hyper-aggressive decks in Pauper, and this card just kind of puts you over the top. I've been having a lot of success with a card called Morsel Theft. I'll show you that. I have a Pauper series coming out by the end of the week. It's, again, on the Shadows over Innistrad theme. We're not using any cards from Shadows over Innistrad. We'll revisit the deck once we have all the cards legal, but it's just a Vampire Tribal for Pauper. Spoiler, it's not being very successful just because I'm limited with the amount of cards to use versus other decks, but it's actually holding its own. It's going toe-to-toe with all the other decks. But I think that all these Madness cards from Innistrad are really, really, really going to shake up the Pauper format, and I think that these Madness cards are finally going to be the cards that kind of entice me into Pauper. Pauper has a lot of room to grow. I've been looking over a ton of cards lately. I'm like, how come this isn't seeing play? This card's insanely good, synergy-wise with a bunch of Pauper different cards. But anywho, I think there's a lot of brewing to be done in the Pauper format. So look forward to that. Look forward to the Alms of the Vein. I think this is also very powerful in both Modern and Standard, and believe it or not, a common made the top of my list. Well, there's my list. I'm interested in your top 10. Again, I could have done 25, 30 cards. That's how good this set is. This set gets my seal of approval times 10. Shout out, kudos to the design team. This is a very well done set. Of course, this isn't the top 10 most powerful cards. A lot of people misunderstand that when I make this video. This is my personal list of cards that I am most excited to brew around. Again, I love to hear your input, what your top 10 is. Maybe we'll give out a prize for the most creative top 10 list in the comment section below. Please be sure to like and subscribe and share this video. This has been Kevin with RogueDeckBuilder.com. Thanks for watching. Thanks for watching Rogue Deck Builder. If you'd like to support Rogue Deck Builder, I highly encourage buying a playmat by clicking the link to your left. Also, if you enjoyed these top 10 videos, click on the top 10 icon to see the full playlist. Also, be sure to like, comment, and subscribe. Thanks for watching.